Thank you. We've got a problem, so I hope it's going to work because I'm using my PowerPoint. Yeah. Well, it's good to celebrate Africa Day, especially with how Africa's gone through so much trials and tribulations. But my PowerPoint is not going to focus on just celebration. I think sometimes a day like this we can also use it for a reality check, to see the checks and balances, things that have gone wrong. So I've got a few points, talk a little bit about Africa. Some people might not be very much aware, and then why it's important to teach African history, change of mindset for the African people, taking full responsibility, like what the other guy was mentioning about African leaders. And I think Africans as well have to take initiatives and strategies to go to the next level. And then we got the conclusion. Obviously, Africa's gone through slavery, colonialism, occupation, and then finally independence. But people need to remember that independence came through blood, sweat, and tears. A prime example is people like Nelson Mandela, who were locked up for 27 years, and all they were asking for was equality. I'm sure people know about South Africa, apartheid system, where people are graded based on their skin color. So, resultantly, because of so many reasons, people of African origin are all over the world. And Africans have contributed more to the world. Obviously, in the Western world, people contributed through free slave labor, resources, raw materials to build the Western world. And in the present day, the people in America, for example, the blacks that you see in America, the ones we call African Americans, are also people from African descent. And in the Caribbean, I know there might be confusion. People look at the Caribbean and think it's a totally different people, but it's the same. Caribbean people are just Africans who, most of them, they come from a generation taken from slavery, and their names changed, lost their culture, so now they look like they've got a completely different identity, but in reality, they're just Africans living in the diaspora. To me, when I look at African people, sorry to say this, but black people to me is the same, the African people. The way I say African is the same when you look at Asian person. If you say somebody's Asian, you don't mean whether he was born here or in Pakistan, but it's just a label for who they are. So it's the same thing for black people. What made people become divided is obviously during slavery, divide and rule. The certain systems benefited from having people disintegrated. So for example, in London, you can meet 3 black people. One person can tell you I'm English, another person tell you I'm Caribbean, another person tell you I'm African. But in reality, it's the same people, and it doesn't save anyone any purpose. So I think that's why in America they've ended up changing things and calling everybody African American. So if you're in America, you can't claim to be Caribbean. As long as you've got black blood, you are African. So, but the UK system is different, but people need to know that. But we're going to get to that later on. Some people of African descent who have distinguished themselves are people like, for example, Barack Obama. You know, he's proud of his African heritage, his Kenyan background. And there's somebody, I think he's not famous, but I think he did a lot more for people. Someone called CLR James. Has everyone heard of him?
Yeah.
Yeah? I know it's surprising. People know about Ghana being the first black African country to get independence, but nobody knows how did Kwame Nkrumah go to know about this. This is why it's important where Africans and Caribbeans have to work together, because for Africans to start to have independence, some of the ideas came from a person from the Caribbean, and he's CLR James. So even though he was from Trinidad and Tobago, he liked to call himself an African in the diaspora, an African from the Caribbean. So CLR James came to London in 1935, and he's one of the guys who started to make the argument, to make noise about why is Africa still being controlled from England. So people like Kwame Nkrumah obviously came to London through education. They started to get the ideas. And when they went back to Africa, the rest is history. Ghana became the first black African country to get independence. So I'm only saying this so people can understand why it's important for African people and Caribbean people to look beyond the structures of slavery or colonialism that seem to divide it. But there's a lot more that these people can work together. Then surprisingly, maybe the Western media does not really focus on that, is what somebody says as well. I'm going to go deep into the media, but the Gatwick Airport, which is one of the most famous, one of the busiest in the world, is actually owned by a Nigerian. and he's called Adebayo Ogunlesi. Of course, people don't know about this. It's another story for another day. Now, Africa is the richest continent in the world. Some people might disagree because you see so many negative images about Africa. So a lot of people think, hold on, why would you say it's the richest in the world when they're not? We never get to see the nice buildings, the nice lifestyle. But it's true. I mean, it's the richest in terms of natural resources. And because Africa is so rich, it also became its downfall. A lot of Western powers wanted to go to Africa because of the riches. This is why in the 1830s, there was something called the Scramble for Africa, where countries in Europe wanted a piece of Africa. Why? Because of the things like diamonds, gold, oil, raw materials. So in 1834, there was a conference in Germany called the Berlin Conference, where the European countries decided to partition Africa. They were just about to get to blows because everybody wanted a piece of Africa. Then sanity prevailed and they decided to sit down and say, okay guys, let's share it. And this is why you see Africa was colonized. If you look, there's British side, there's the Belgians, there's a French side, but they actually sat down to actually say, let's divide it. Again, there's a list of natural wonders of the world. One of the natural wonders of the world is the Victoria Falls. It's actually the greatest falls in the world, bigger than Niagara Falls in Canada, and it's actually found in Africa, in Zimbabwe and Zambia. Again, a lot of people don't really get to know about these things because it's a story for another day, but I'm going to get to it. Now, some people can say, what happened in the past should stay in the past. Why do you want to keep on bringing the past here? But I think it's important to teach history, especially because even though slavery finished a long time ago, but the legacy of slavery, the legacy of colonialism is still stuck in people's minds. To me, I'll tell you something, it was structurally put into people's minds. For example, there was a British MP called Thomas Macaulay. He was an MP, traveled around the world. At the time, you know, Britain was an imperialistic country, so they always want all these researchers, people who know how to control people. And Macaulay said, okay, in my travels, obviously I think he went to Africa, to India, and he said, look, the only way we can control people, because remember, part of the empire, all it was about is taking resources. And then they said, okay, the only way we can control people, let's make sure we take their culture and make them feel negative about themselves. So I'm trying to connect that negativity that Africans have, that it was not, they were not born like that from the beginning, but it was something that was put in like a software. You know, you put a software in your computer, and then your computer started to act a certain way. So I think for me, when we talk about history, we're just trying to make people aware why we could criticize certain things. Because people do certain things, they don't know how. Because remember, when you were born like a blank tape. Then the information that you get fed is how you start to see the world. So explaining history and teaching history is just making people aware, because if you don't know where you're coming from, it's difficult for you to know where you're going. Future leaders. Africa's got so many challenges, and for any person to be a future leader of Africa, there's no way you can solve problems if you do not know what's been going on or the situation. So history will help anyone who wants to be a future leader for Africa. And school and the media. What people don't realize is that young people, when they're growing through, they learn either from school or from the media. And from school, it's about a curriculum. If the curriculum does not teach enough, that person will be limited based on what they know from school. So platforms like this, for me, I use this as an alternative platform where we can explain certain things that people do not get either from school or from the media. And then again, the media, I think one of the guys mentioned something about the media as well. You can, for example, you can say you know about Theresa May, but you don't know her. The only things that you know about her is what you see on TV, what you read in the papers. Yeah. So in a way, the media can control how you think. So I keep saying I'm going to go to it because my point was to say Africans need to also to control the media. Because if you look about newspapers, for example, 80% of the news in that media will talk about what's happening in America, what's happening in Europe. So for a typical person born in London, you don't really get to know the positive side of Africa. The only 10% that features Africa, 9 times out of 10, is about the poverty. The kids who are suffering. So what it does psychologically for young people, they start to see the negativity of Africa and they never get to hear the positive side. So if you don't control the media, whoever controls the media can dictate what people think. And this is why, yes, from an African point of view, people need to understand. You don't have to be in Africa to be African. Again, because of slavery, people were rewarded. The less you are African, the better you are as a person. And this is why, again, it's a shame to say, but this is why, again, people are being changed their names. And as time went on, people started to feel good. If you've got a name that sounds Western, you feel good. But even up to today, you still get people, they voluntarily go and change their name because they feel negative about being African. But again, remember that was a system that started during slavery. So we need to think independently. I'll just give an example. There must be white people in this room, or wherever you know, who were born in Africa or born in Nigeria, but you never get to see a white person called Adebayo or something. Why? Nationality is just a piece of paper, but people take it the wrong way. You can be born wherever you are, but you still have to respect your culture. Like myself, I was lucky, I've lived around the world and I've lived in China and Hong Kong. You meet loads of English people, but still, they are Japanese by birth, but they still got a lot more respect for the UK. Look at someone like Boris Johnson. He was born in America, but you'd never see him trying to criticize the UK to justify it because I was born in the USA. So I think Africans need to learn a lot more from other people as well, that you've got to keep it real, be yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. Let's go to the next. Now, the blame mentality culture, one of the reasons why Africa is backwards is because the leaders sometimes don't want to take responsibility. It's so easy for African leaders now to get power, and then all they do is spend the next 20 years blaming what happened years ago. I think that's very negative. Look, for example, you've got people, Africans, dying in boats trying to get to Europe. Where are the African leaders? You can't keep on talking about this happened. For me, when I talk about history, it's nothing to blame, but it's about just to reflect so we can plan for the future. But African leaders, and loads of them, they spend a lot more money in Europe, they do all this corruption, but people are dying. You've got to ask yourself, it's so easy to blame an asylum seeker like me and Tony. We're working with migrants in Malta at the moment. And there's so much blatant racism where Africans know clearly that there's no place for you here. But now, the easy thing for a lot of people is to blame like, oh, racism. But I love to look at the other way, that, okay, why you want to say racism? Why do you want Europe to accept these migrants? Why can't African leaders themselves take responsibility so that people don't leave those countries in the first place? So until they touch to take responsibility, it's a negative for Africa. And the dependency syndrome, some African countries, again, they rely so much on Western aid. But people need to know that there's nothing for free. There's no free aid. The aid that comes also comes with conditions, and some of the conditions are not good for Africa. So I think African leaders, the ones that are coming through, they need to come with solutions, not excuses. Now, you're talking about, I know there's a confusion. People know that Ghana is the first African country to get independence, but I just want to make it clear now. Ghana is not the first country to get independence, but it's the first black African country to get independence. The Arab countries, they started to get independence like Egypt, 1922, etc., etc. But maybe because people connect black people in Africa more, but they also forgot these other Arab countries. So I just wanted to make it quite clear. Somebody might question me why you're saying this. Yeah. So dependency syndrome has to change if Africa has to move to the next level. Counter poor images with positive news. Again, typically from London, people get to know about Africa, especially they see posters of kids starving. That's a typical image that comes to people's minds. This is why people become more negative. Even African kids growing in the UK as well, they don't want to connect with Africa because they think, oh, I've had people say in Africa live in trees. I don't want to live in a tree. Oh, I've had people walk without shoes because they see so much negativity. They never get to see the positive. In the Western world, it makes more sense to portray that negative image because even the big NGOs, they make so much money because they want to make you feel sorry. But I'm trying to explain this so you know that when you go to Africa, it's different. There are people who are living their high life way better than in London, but you don't get to see those images. So I think the way African people can change that is to also counter those negativity by also showing the good side of Africa. There's loads of things that a lot of people, when they go to Africa for the first time, they get surprised because they are bombarded every day with aid this, poor this, but that's not the true picture. Yes, poverty is there, but there's always two sides of the story. And this is why you can see in countries like Zimbabwe or South Africa, where there's been government trying to reclaim land. But the people there who are non-African, who are non-black, they don't want to live there because they still got a good life, which is way better than in England. But they do not show that. So people need to see both sides of Africa. And I think that responsibility lies with Africans themselves. You cannot just sit and let people show negativity and then, so you can counter as well. There's also an issue about goods. Africa has got so many resources, so many raw materials. There's diamonds, there's oil, but say for example in Nigeria, they produce oil, but it's still expensive. Now you ask yourself, why would a country have natural resources and then it's become expensive for the local people?
It's crazy.
Why would countries like Zimbabwe, Botswana, they've got diamonds, but people there, they can't even get diamonds? The reason is because they've got the natural resources for people who believe in Christianity from God, but for those diamonds to be processed, they rely on Western countries to do that. So if the diamonds are going to be processed, when they come back to that country, they'll be more expensive. So the same people who own it naturally, they're now paying expensive for their own thing. So I'm saying African people should learn to process their own material, their own raw materials. Look at like the countries that produce oil. The companies that process that oil, companies, European companies, BP, Shell, etc., etc. So that has to change. So Africans cannot just rely to say we've got the raw materials, but they're not doing the finished product. But doing the finished product will help in two ways. One, it will make things cheaper in the country. And number two, it will create more employment. Next slide. Again, talking about background and respect. Remember I was talking about mental slavery, that slavery finished a long time ago, but it's still stuck in people's minds. So, I think the more we teach history, the more people get to understand. People actually start to become more comfortable with their backgrounds. Walk in London and you see a lot more kids, black kids, they can tell you that, look, like for example, I'm coming here to the Africa Day, and some people would say, why are you going to go there? Or I can call my friend and say, let's go to Africa Day. They were like, no, I've got nothing to do with Africa, mate. I was born in this country. Again, that's a negativity that needs to be changed. Or some African kid will say, oh no mate, I'm from the Caribbean, I'm not from Africa, so it's got nothing to do with me. Again, that has to change. So this is why we need to teach more so people really get to understand that you don't have to be in Africa to be African. Again, as I keep saying that Caribbean people and African people are the same, Haiti has joined the African Union. And Haiti is a Caribbean country just like Jamaica. But there's a special history about Haiti that people don't realize. The Western world is trying to blatantly lie to people that they stopped slavery. No, slavery was stopped by slaves themselves. If you read a book called The Black Jacobins, written by CLR James, it will tell you that slaves in Haiti, a French colony, they rebelled after watching the French Revolution, and then they realized that, you know what, because France back in the day, it used to be ruled by a monarch, and that monarch was ruthless. But remember, monarchs were not voted by anybody. So the French people, typical French people, obviously revolted. This is why now, even in the UK as well, the monarch do not make executive decisions, they're just there as a ceremonial, but the leaders we vote for are the ones that control the country. So the French people obviously kicked out the monarch, and this is how the structure is. So the slaves in Haiti, which was controlled by the French, they had access to what was going on, and then they rebelled. And then Haiti became the first black republic in the world. So this is why, again, maybe because there's so much history behind it, it has become the first non-geographical country in the world to join the African Union. So these are Caribbean people, but they decided to join an African Union that's in Africa, in a different place. Again, people need to understand, because people are coming from the same background. So I wish a lot more people will really get to understand this. So they look in London, for example. The police have created something called Trident. Trident deals with black on black violence. And some of that violence is between African and Caribbeans. It's because of lack of education, lack of understanding that you're fighting your brother. There's no point for this. So if those things were explained to people properly, some of the hatred, even in London, could become better. But again, if Africans do not take control now, the time to complain and make excuses is gone. Now we've got these platforms. Thank you for giving us this platform. At least we can explain. Because these things I'm talking about, you don't get them in the curriculum in the UK. If I was in a position of influence, of course I would have to change the curriculum so I can teach a bit more about African history, so people can understand things. The only reason why a Western country will not make so much effort to explain, because what has happened with Africa is very sensitive. So there's no point, like from a British point of view, to spend more energy explaining about slavery, this. It will just cause too much chaos, so they stay away from it. But in the meantime, we kill ourselves. And then they watch, and all they do is to say, no problem, we're going to create Trident. The same people that created that slave mentality, they've got a solution, Trident. A special police force that will watch you. Counter-commercial imperialism. Now, imperialism finished a long time ago, but there is still something called commercial imperialism. The way commercial imperialism works is simple. If you look around the world, everybody knows about Arsenal, everybody knows about Man United, everybody knows American artists, but how many African artists are known in this country? If you ask any person in Africa, go to Jamaica, go to Congo, go to Nigeria, everybody will tell you about Arsenal. But how many people can tell me a football team from Nigeria? Nobody. That just tells you that the structure of imperialism is still there. So, Man United can afford to pay Wayne Rooney £400,000 per week, whereas teams in Africa cannot pay anybody £50 per week. Why? Because the people are brainwashed to undermine their own products. So in Africa, when you watch football, you're not watching for free. You pay image rights, you pay for merchandise, and that merchandise money comes back to Europe. In the meantime, you're talking about, we've got independence. And this is what Kwame Nkrumah said, political independence without economic independence is nothing but. So these are some of the deep things that people don't realize. So this is why it's so much easier to make money if you're in the Western world than you're in Africa. Because everybody, imagine, Africa's got about 57 countries. Asia, whatever, everybody's pouring money back in the English Premier League. What about in other countries in Africa? People cannot even support their own products. And this is why in the UK we always say buy British. It's very important. So Africans need to understand as well to support themselves. You cannot keep on blaming. We know how the game was played, but now we're just about to understand, and this is why we'll have to talk about history. So commercial imperialism, you can stop it. It's all in the mind. People are negative about themselves. I'm lucky because I travel around the world, and you go to some place and you go to Malawi or you go to Botswana, and then somebody says, I don't watch football here, man. I only watch English Premier League. But that's dangerous. Because again, the little resources that you have, you're putting it back. Whereas you should be trying to maintain the little that you have. It's the same with music as well. It's so easier, regardless of your color, but as long as you're in the Western world, it's so easier. Because your music is more trendy wherever in the world. Whereas African music, all these years, we started to hear African music in this country. Maybe, I don't know if people know about P-Square, Afro-Beats, that's on TV, but it's only starting now. So it's just been one-sided. We all support Western, but nothing support African. So Africans themselves, I've lived in Asia as well. People don't know, in Korea, South Korea, and China, they've got a booming industry with their own movie. They support their own. Some people ask them about Brad Pitt, they don't want to know about Brad Pitt. It's Bollywood. They're so much into their own industry, and Africans do not. They're so negative. And this is why I say there's still that legacy of slavery, of colonialism is still stuck in people, and people need to change it. Can we go to the next one? Now, you look at countries like India, they've changed the game. Just as I keep saying that you don't have to be in Africa to be African. India is going to become one of the super countries in the world in the next few years. Why? Because they're using their people in the diaspora, regardless where they were born, whether they were born in India, born in the UK, but the Indian government found a smart way of having them invest back home. So India is now talking about spacecraft, things that were never had before, but the people who are making it happen are not even people born in India, some of them. They're people born in this country, they've been to school, they understand how systems work. So when they go back there, they're putting back what they've learned. So I think Africans could do the same thing as well. But the only way you can make it happen is to make Africans understand that people who are here, they need to understand why they have to do something than to just sit there and complain and say, oh, Africa is negative. Always just remember that if there's a problem, if you don't do anything about it, you also become part of the problem. So when people are brainwashed to think, oh, if I come to London for 2 days, I'm not British, I've got nothing to do with Africa. If I'm from the Caribbean, I've got nothing to do with Africa. This is the negativity. And this is why Africa, being the richest continent, has got nothing to show for it. And just remember, when I keep saying that Africa has done a lot more for the world, remember the Western world was built on free labor, and that free labor was coming from Africa. Raw materials building this country, Africans did not know how to use their own metal, whatever steel, but it was coming to build here. So in a way, you know, it's how it is, but people need to understand this. And again, being in Europe, you shouldn't take it as a place to just complain. But people need to understand as well that it's a privilege. As long as people know they're in Europe, they can still do a lot more for their countries of background by being here, because Europe has produced so many leaders. I've got an example there. What's her name? Benazir Bhutto. She's a former Prime Minister of Pakistan. But she went to Harvard and she went to Oxford. The point I'm trying to say this is that Africans can also have people who are here who've got all the skills, who can still do wonders when they go to Africa. That's why it's important to make people understand that it's also their responsibility. And this is why I'm giving an example of someone like Benazir Bhutto, even though she's British, American, but she still went back with the skills that she learned in the Western world. And creating news outlets. I think, I'm also a journalist by the way as well, and I think my brother there mentioned something about, news outlets are important. If you look at the UK, they've got something called Reuters. These are news wholesalers. This is why when something happens in a random country, it's already on the BBC. It doesn't mean a person goes instantly to where it's happening, but they've got people who are strategically stationed around the world. So this is why you got something like, I think probably you understand what I'm saying, yeah? Yeah? They could be in London, but they've got people around the world who wire news to one source. So papers and stuff, they can pick from one source. But Africans haven't got that. So if you know that the media is so important, and Africans haven't got that, they rely on Western media, but Western media, they will focus on their Western world. So this is why Africa does not get enough coverage. And the only coverage that they seem to have is the negative coverage. But if they control their own media, then things will change. In America, they've got something called AP, and in France, they've got AFP, which also focus on the French world. So, creating news outlets is very important. Can we go to the next one? Also, most wars are now fought in the media, not on the battlefield. Before the wars even started, politicians put so much energy into convincing people what they're trying to do. So it is important to play a big role in the media industry for Africans. I know it's quite a complex issue, which if I had more time, we can get deep into it. But definitely, the media plays a big role. As I said earlier on, you think whoever leader that you support, you don't know them in person, but you only know through the media. The perception that you see in the media is what in your brain makes a decision. So Africans haven't got that. All they have is the little space that they get in the Western media, which is most cases negative. And that negativity also makes people who could be helping Africa feel negative, and they don't want to be part of it. And this is what a lot of African people do not want when they look at their background, because there's nothing interesting coming from there. Again, it's the same. Leaders in the diaspora. Africa can get leaders in the diaspora. If you look at Botswana, for example, the president of Botswana is actually British. He was born in the UK, but he's ruling a country, one of the most stable countries in Africa is Botswana. He's got the strongest currency as well. So I think if a lot more people get to understand this, a lot more Africans in the UK, they will stop being restricted by thinking that I'm in the UK, what I'm doing in Africa, because there are people who've actually gone back and they're making differences. You go to the next one? So, you got to learn history to understand some of these things, and education is important, and Africa need to decolonize the mind, because at the moment, yes, people know about this, but there's still a lot more that has to happen for people to understand issues. And changing the mindset is still all connected. People need to stop thinking from a colonial mindset. People need to stop thinking as if they're slaves, because mental slavery is still in the mind. And there's a video I want to play. It's just a Jamaican artist called Peter Tosh. Just like people like Bob Marley, people like Marcus Garvey. There are people from the Caribbean who understand that they have to do something more for Africa. So this song is Peter Tosh just trying to say, wherever you are, you're still African. So wherever you've got a British passport, it's not an excuse to deny your background. So can you just play? Video?
Oh, what's happened? What's that? Yeah, I don't know what you...
I'm fine.
Oh, you know.
What is it? Stop.
I don't know what...
I'll leave it then. Shoot. Not fine, that's fine.
You can find either on YouTube or Play.
I have already just that screen.
This is a new dish. Okay.
I don't know what it is.
Actually, you still got it here.
Okay, just leave it.
No, I don't want to listen.
That's right.
Yeah, but I don't know why it's not.
That's right, no, just leave it. But I'll just leave you with one thing, just remember what Kwame Nkrumah said, political independence without economic independence is but an illusion. So Africans have got independence, it's good to celebrate, but just remember, you've got to take control of the economic independence as well. Thank you for listening.